Alright, I'm here again. Hopefully, I don't know until this video is uploaded how bad the sunlight is going to be. I've changed it up a little bit with just the camera area, so hopefully it's alright. But now, I'm going to be doing one of my evals. I've been waiting a while to do an eval because I had 17,000, I thought, pictures to go through. Turns out it was 178,000. So I've been waiting a while trying to find a few different athletes to work on. I've got a number of them. I just need to wait for actual pictures of them to come out because the pictures I wanted for players haven't come out yet. But one who has is Kacper Jaszewski. Now Kacper is a player I've wanted to do a video on for a minute from last season because he was an Offensive Rookie of the Year nominee in 2023. This one's going to be a little bit differently formatted to my other evals because I want to look a little bit into Kacper, and I also want to look at how it's been used from this year compared to last year and the differences in its production. Now, I don't want this to come across like I'm criticizing the Panthers organization or their offensive play calling. I think their offensive play calling is great, and I think their organization has been one of the more model organizations in Europe. You know, they've had their issues, but what team hasn't? But honestly, this was just interesting to me to kind of look into the differences. And Kacper is one of the elite prospects at the position in Europe. Kacper started off with the Wyszków Rhinos over in Poland. He started there when he was 13 years old. He then moved over to the NFL Academy where he won 2020-21 Offensive Player of the Year. And then he moved over to the Wrocław Panthers where he is currently at to this day. He made his rookie season last year, had an Offensive Rookie of the Year nominee as I mentioned, and now is coming into his sophomore season in the ELF. Now to start off with 2023, the offensive identity was extremely different. We have Matyas at quarterback who had a very respectable season. Dawid Wrzosky at running back who played 12 games, 124 carries, 580 yards and 3 touchdowns in the previous season. We'll hear about more of him later. He'll go on to have an all-star season in 2023. On the receiving core, we also had Tony Tate, who was one of the best receivers in all of Europe this season. 10 games played, 39 catches, 895 yards, 16 touchdowns. Clinical player, very fast, able to take the top off the defense. All of them next to Kacper allowed him to have more room to work. He had the European DB, not necessarily the American, and he was able to get a lot of good yardage in. He finished with 11 games played, 37 receptions for 521 yards and 4 touchdowns. This offensive quadrant allowed Kacper to have a lot of the ball, and we see that through his routes. For the sake of uniformity, we're just going to call it X, Y, H, and Z. I know different systems work differently, different coaches might label it, but that's just what I'm going to go with just so everyone's on the same page and it doesn't get too convoluted. For the first game of 2023, this was his first game in the ELF. He went 5 for 5 on targets for 125 yards and a touchdown against the Hamburg Sea Devils. Clearly see a variety of routes favouring inside with a few hitches, a few deep balls, some posts, some inside 10s, as well as some outside breaking routes as well. A long variety where he was used creatively. In game 3 against the Bird and Thunder, skipped game 2 considering he didn't play. He got 4 catches for 37 yards, but again he was used for these inside breaking routes. He was used in the deeps. This is all of his routes, not necessarily just the ones he caught, but through the slot he was used a little bit more in this game, but still favouring inside with a couple of outside breaking routes. To start 2024 in week 1, Kacper very clearly has a different role within this offense. He was using the X, Y, H, and Z for the first time in the games that I studied. He ran a less diverse route tree and less routes overall as the game developed. He didn't run nearly as many. He was on the rotation a lot more and wasn't necessarily starting Z. In week 2, more of the same. Spread a lot more out to the X side. A couple more fades, a few inside routes, but not nearly the amount of velocity and volume that he had in year 1. In fact, he was used a lot more as a blocking receiver during some of the points of these games. Now, why is this? Now, the answer really is not that complicated. Stephen Duncan has come in as the new quarterback, formerly the Dresden Monarchs. He's a gunslinger. He has no problem spreading the ball out. We saw that last year with the Dresden Monarchs with multiple players going over 1,000 yards. That's not the problem. The problem for Kacper is the amount of talent within an offense has drastically improved during the course of this year. They added 3-time All-Star Andrea Bottella Moreno at tight end. He's played 33 games in the ELF with 125 receptions, 1,484 yards and 17 touchdowns, and is very widely considered the best or the second best tight end in the entire league. 2021 All-Star Jakob Mazin returned from retirement, 22 games, 93 receptions, 1,265 yards and 11 touchdowns in his Panthers career. We talked about how good David was last season when he earned an All-Star vote. He also was the 2023 rush leader, the 2023 Homegrown Player of the Year, Finished with 23 games played in ELF now with 329 attempts, 1,696 yards and 15 total touchdowns. Bernat, another 2021 All-Star, returns from injury. He's played 18 games, 70 catches with 956 yards and 8 touchdowns in his Panthers career. Kennedy Adams returned to the league after spending another year in the GFL. He finished that season with 15 games, 110 attempts, 797 yards and 12 touchdowns. And lastly, at the time of the writing, Daniel Bender, the receiver that was a DB last year, he's replaced Matt Cole in the injury reserve, but he matches exactly what Stephen Duncan looks for in an American receiver. Shorter, faster, able to affect the run game, extremely quick in his movement, and has been a big part of the Panthers offense this season with his rushing touchdowns and the jet sweeps, as well as with his hands. Now, this abundance of talent has led to Kacper not getting as many balls as he did last season, which is expected. The amount of great running backs, the great receivers, and amazing tight ends is always going to eat into his production. I really think this shows that sometimes stats don't tell the entire story, especially in someone like Kacper's case, where there are just an incredible amount of players within that roster that can affect a ton of different areas in the offense. Like I said, their play calling this year has been phenomenal. It's been one of the best offenses in the league in terms of watchability and in terms of scoring. But I just think it's important backstory to explain why he is not getting the production he had last season. It doesn't change the fact that he's still an elite European prospect. That being said, let's get into actual watching the film. The big thing that's translated from his first season until present day is his space creation. Now, Kacper has a great release off the line, very stabbing. He gets over the top of receivers extremely well, which is a very veteran move that I think he has learned off of people within the Panthers organization, as well as his time with the NFL Academy. The amount of times he can break coverage and create just an inch of space through a DB or a linebacker just off of that stabbing release is seriously impressive. I love the way he's able just to shimmy bigger DBs or linebackers out of their own shoes and then create that single yard of space, which is all he needs to reel in the ball. He doesn't necessarily run sharp routes. He runs them at a certain angle and bend in which the cornerbacks just can't really deal with very well, to be completely honest. He finds spaces between the coverage, which is another high IQ veteran move. He's able to pace his routes very well. He doesn't rush through them to the end of the progression, and this has been present from day one. Overall, starting from the release, he creates space with his footwork, his dexterity, and his ability to go outside and in. His routes are softer in their approach, but he's able to find space between the coverages. He has a great movement style where he's deceptively quite quick, and he doesn't rush to the end of his route and get stuck just standing in the middle of nowhere, or out of the reach of the quarterback's arm. Naturally, with an approach much slower, his route speed is something that isn't what I would call in the elite category, and it has led to quarterbacks taking unwanted pressure or taking sacks because it takes a while for Kacper to get into the right places. This isn't a glaring issue, but as he develops as a receiver, I think he'll learn to pace his routes a little bit better, hitting the gears when he needs to, turning it up, and being able to find those pockets just a little bit quicker. A wide receiver is only as good as their hands. Now, don't get it twisted, just because he's not had a bunch of catches this season does not mean that he doesn't have great hands. And he's been used predominantly on the shorter routes this season, so we haven't seen that flashing as much. But when he's allowed to come over the middle with the routes that he was in year one, he's able to reel the ball in, he concentrates well, is able to take contact at a surprisingly high degree. He has good feet discipline as well, keeping his toes inbounds and able to complete the catch. And to complete the process of the catch when coming to the ground as well is something that he has veteran-like skill set when it comes to. He concentrates well on the ball and isn't necessarily a rack receiver, but is safe with the hands and can get you the first downs that you need with his outside and inside presence. Last season, he really flashed the ability to track deep balls. We saw this several times throughout the year. Now, it doesn't mean his hands are perfect. He's listed at 5'10", 185 pounds. So he is slightly smaller for a receiver on the outside, which means he can get out-muscled to the ball at times. We saw in his rookie year as well that he would take the eyes off the ball when it comes to being a little bit more open on deep routes, but that seems to have been something that he's taken into consideration this year, and I think that we'll see that flash as the season goes on as something that he's improved on when he gets the opportunity to go deep. I mentioned in the intro that he's been used a lot more for blocking. Now, he is a okay blocking receiver, however I do not think that it's his forte. There is a lack of engagement, somewhat of a hesitancy towards blocking. He's not coming into linebackers and safeties with necessarily bad intentions like you would want a receiver to do to contain the outside. His angles aren't exactly great sometimes. He'll arm block or he'll go past a player that is going to be entering into a lane to affect the running back. He doesn't have the blocking acumen to pick up blocks or to chip linebackers. There is potential. He does show some decent hand placement and he is able to make key blocks in the run game. I just think that it's something that he could improve on going into 2024 that could make him an even more valuable weapon and potentially move him closer to the starting spot that he had in 2023. Alright, hopefully the video quality actually works. On my phone now it looks great. And then when I put it on here it looks fine. And then when I upload it to YouTube it looks terrible. However, I hope you enjoyed this one. This was really good fun to make. I wanted to go for this different approach. Just make it a little bit more developed, give a little bit more backstory to the athletes. I really love showcasing the European athletes, and especially the younger ones that are coming through as like pioneers of European ball. Some of them I've known for years. Kacper is not a player I've known for an incredible long time, but I really just enjoyed watching his skill set. I'm going to enjoy watching him develop under this system and see how far he can go. Honestly, I really do rate him extremely highly. He's young, he's going to be successful in this league, and I think that Poland just has such an underrated receiver core. Like, the Polish receivers are really good. Like, they're fun. They're big. Like, Bernat Mazin is 6'2", and I don't think it's any secret that when Mazin retired, the 23 went to Kacper. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. To have such a successful Polish receiver, the first touchdown in ELF history, and his number goes to him, I think that's a real big sign of how much belief the program has in him too. So that's going to finish us off today. I hope you enjoyed. I've got a bunch of players I want to do this for. Pablo Arrea, Noah Traore, Noel Swankor. Who else was on that list? I'll probably do Mario Flores as well. He's just a receiver I enjoy watching. And he's a friend of mine. So I wanted to... He's just... People don't talk about him enough as like really good number 2 receivers in the league. So... yeah, I think that's all really. Busy week coming up. Obviously, I'll have this uploaded. I'm trying a more marketing strategy as well, so I'm going to be pushing these out with alternative thumbnails, my Instagram, and my Twitter as well. So we're trying to get a little bit more international with this, trying to get a few more viewership because, yeah, I really want to hear more people talk about European ball, and I love European football. So it's the only thing that's kept me sane. So yeah, let's go. It's been a good week. We got a lot of games coming up for week 3. If you haven't seen, I did a whole breakdown. I'll link that in the description. This is the second Panther player I've done. I did Dusan, who had an amazing week last week, and I was bragging about it the whole stream. How I thought he was going to be an all-star defensive end. Polish names are so hard. Cities and names and everything in Poland is hard to pronounce. My sisters are Polish, my half-sisters are Polish, and I feel like I let them down with some of the pronunciation. So, yeah, enough waffling. Thank you very much for watching. Again, as always, support has been a mental. Say it every time, but I just want to thank everyone at the end of these videos. And I'll see you next time. Thank you, and goodbye.